Dawie Roodt, Chief Economist at Efficient Group. Always good to have you in my sights. And the 1st of August is a big day for South Africa. On today's show, we have put forward the South African presidency's view, who says that South Africa has been hard at work in negotiating SA-US relations. We've got the DA on the other side saying they haven't seen any visibility of such negotiations. Where do you stand and what happens tomorrow for South Africa?
I don't know what's going on, Bronwyn, but based on my experience from government and analyzing the way that they've been doing business the last couple of years, decades, in fact, I think the DA is probably closer to the truth than the ANC themselves. So usually what happens is that our government waits until number 99, and then there's the scramble and trying to make some sort of deal, and I suspect this is what's happening now as well. I don't think there's much progress going on.
So what does this mean? I mean, Dawie, we saw Trump coming out heavy-handed on India, given he's put 25% tariffs on Indian goods. And then he's also saying that he's going to punish them further for their relations with Russia. Now, it's well known that the US has spoken out against our relations with both Russia and Iran. Are we going to be in the firing line?
We must understand, Bronwyn, that this is not about politics, or rather, this is not about economics. This is about politics. If you look at the size of the South African economy, if you try to determine how important the South African economy is to the United States economy, we are basically irrelevant. This cannot be about economics. It must be about politics. So, and I think what Donald Trump is trying to achieve is to get South Africa to reconsider our relations with certain countries. You mentioned Iran, for example, and certain other international organizations. And this is basically Donald Trump trying to force us to reconsider our relations with these organizations. But it cannot be about the economics, because South Africa is a tiny economy, and South Africa is not going to make any difference to the US economy. It is going to make a huge impact on the South African economy, these tariffs, but the Americans won't even know about this. The South African economy, if you look at percentages, the South African economy is something like 0.3% of the world economy. The whole of Africa is something like 3% of the world economy. The United States is 25% of the world economy. So it is not. It makes me think of a little dog with a that can't. I mean, you can't bite, but you can make a lot of noise. And I think Donald Trump is more concerned about the noise, and certainly not about our bite.
We have heard repeatedly, Dawie, from Cyril that he will not be bullied. Do you think he's going to have to retrace on that stance?
You will be bullied, whether you like Donald Trump or not. Also keep in mind is that we're talking about the possibility of 13% tariffs, which seems to me a fait accompli. I think it's going to happen. But he can always increase it to 50%. I mean, this guy can do whatever he wants to. But that's not all. He's got a lot of other things that he can do to really, really hurt South Africa. Say, for example, we know that they're considering sanctions against certain individuals in South Africa, but say, for example, he decides to implement certain financial sanctions against South Africa. That's going to be far more damaging than these the trade tariffs that we have currently, or probably going to have tomorrow morning. So I don't think for one single moment this is a discussion between equals. We are not talking about equals here. Donald Trump might be a bully, but he's by far the strongest bully on the playground. And you don't mess with a bully. That's just the reality of life.
And Dawie, just on those individual sanctions against potential ANC individual leaders, we know the Jackson bill has gone through a first stage. Do you have a sense that that will ultimately become a reality? It's got a number of stages to go through.
Yes. This is not the end of the Donald Trump administration. There is more to come. I don't know what it's going to be. It could be higher tariffs. It could be some other measures. It could be financial sanctions against South Africa. It could be sanctions against individuals. But Donald Trump is very, very unhappy about our international political positioning. That's what it is all about. And he will use whatever is available to him to force South Africa to reconsider that. So no. Tomorrow, when the 30% tariffs, when they kick in, if they do kick in, it's not the end. There's more to come. And the more to come is going to hurt the South African economy. If you look at the tariffs in itself, the tariffs is probably in a worst case scenario going to shave off, say, 0.2% of economic growth. According to the Reserve Bank, we can potentially lose 100,000 jobs, which is a lot. And of course, many businesses in certain industries will be affected. But in the bigger picture of things, it's not really that much. But the reality also is that the South African economy is hardly growing. And this is just another nail in the coffin of the South African economy. So,
I
and,
know
and the reason why you're doing
the BizNews community gets upset when you say that it isn't a big impact, and the 100,000 jobs, is in the bigger scheme of things, not such a big deal. There's a lot of there's an outcry rather to say actually this is going to be a significant effect on an already struggling South African economy, which is what you're saying now.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And now, if the South African economy is growing at 5 or 6%, then you take off 0.2%. That's nothing really. But the South African economy is not growing at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%. The South African economy is not going to reach 1% economic growth. And if my number at the moment without tariffs is 0.8%, and take off 0.2% off of 0.8%, now we're talking about a big deal. And the South African economy is not growing because of the mismanagement by the ANC. That's the reason why we're not growing. And it seems to me is that, and I'm not arguing for or against certain moral positions, but it seems to me is that our political leaders, they take certain political position, or rather moral positions, but they forget quite often that there is a certain reality. And the reality is that if you take a certain moral position, you are going to pay a price for that. And we are paying a price for that. Whether you like Iran or not, whether you think it's morally right or wrong to support the Palestinians or not, you have to understand that if you take political positions, international political positions, there can be and there will be an economic fallout. And this economic fallout will affect your economy. You must consider that. You have to be aware of that.
Talk to us about interest rates. Today in the show, we are on BizNews Briefing. We're carrying Jerome Powell yesterday, holding rates in the US unchanged despite being bullied by Donald Trump into potentially easing rates, but he's holding his ground. And that obviously dictates interest rates globally. With the current uncertainty, do you think that's the right move that we're seeing out of the Fed? And that will obviously pull through to the SARB.
Yes, I think the Fed made the right decision, sitting on their hands. I think they're going to cut in September, perhaps. I'm not so sure anymore, but I think that was the right decision for more than one reason. One is, I think, for economic reasons. The U.S. economy is stronger than what we've thought up to now. That's one. But the second very important reason is why not cutting interest rates is actually cementing the independence of the Fed, which is very important as well. So what does it mean for South Africa? I think we certainly have scope to cut rates by 50 bips in South Africa. Inflation at 7% is really very well within the target, and inflation expectations have been coming down quite a lot recently. So there is, technically speaking, without a doubt, room for a 50 basis points cut. Is the Reserve Bank going to cut? There could be a 25 bips cut, but I can think of two very important reasons why they will not cut interest rates. The one is there's uncertainty around tariffs. So we have to get more clarity on what's going to happen here, what the impact of that is going to be. That is one, and that's an important point why they may decide to not cut yet. The second reason is that the Reserve Bank is waiting for the Minister of Finance to reduce the inflation targets. So inflation is very nice, around about 3% at the moment. And if you cut interest rates too soon now, there is that small possibility that inflation can start rising about 3% again, and that will affect inflation expectations. So if we can manage inflation expectations down and set it at 3%, or at least lower than where it now is, and we can only do that with the Minister of Finance actually make a decision to cut the inflation targets to 3%, then I think at the next meeting, the Reserve Bank can cut interest rates, provided the Minister of Finance have reduced the inflation target. So those are the two reasons: waiting for the Minister of Finance and uncertainty around the tariffs.
And Dawie, just in terms of the focus on tariffs, it obviously will be the talk as we go into the end of this week and into next week. From a global economy perspective, There are a number of theories being thrown around as to what Trump is actually doing in creating almost a new trade order. What is your ultimate scenario here in terms of 2, 3, 4 months down the line?
The world is going to be completely different. Donald Trump is turning the world upside down at various levels. He's doing it politically, he's doing it diplomatically, or the lack of diplomacy. And of course, it's got a huge impact on the world economy as well. We must understand that the US economy, or the United States, was and still is the world's policeman. And they are paying for most of this. And I think from that point of view, Donald Trump is right, is that other countries must start paying for their own defenses as well. So that there's no doubt about that. What is also true is that the United States has been seen as the consumer of last instance by many countries, like the Chinese. The reason why the Chinese economy did so well the last couple of years is because they sold stuff to the United States. And Donald Trump, in a way, is right as far as that is concerned as well. Having said that, free trade is always a good idea because it's good for everybody. So I disagree with Donald Trump as far as that is concerned. And also keep in mind that the Americans are the biggest donors internationally, bigger than the rest of the world put together. So everybody's complaining about US aid, for example, being withdrawn, including from South Africa, but nobody thanked the Americans for all the aid they've been giving to the rest of the world. So I think the world's going to look completely different. And perhaps the world could be a better place. Maybe we will all realize that these tariffs are not a good idea, and maybe we have to reconsider tariffs, and maybe we should really create a level playing field for everybody, including the Americans. But what is important for the Americans to also understand that the tariffs is about physical imports and exports mostly, and there's much more to the modern economy. Modern economies is not about manufacturing anymore. Modern economies is about services, and Americans, without a doubt, dominate there. So the world's going to be a different place. I think there's also major and significant artificial intelligence changes happening, and technological changes happening. And it's very exciting to be an economist in this kind of environment. But we are heading for extremely uncertain times, politically, socially, economically, technologically speaking, and so on. But actually, I'm very, 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 very excited, because if you stand back a moment and see where we came from the past 100 years, the past 1,000 years, the past 100,000 years, every new period in the history of mankind actually improved our living conditions quite significantly. And I think this is another major change in the history of mankind. It's going to look different, and a lot of people are going to get hurt in the process, but overall it's going to be good for us people.
I want to bring it back just to South Africa and the latest developments around the government of national unity, the president firing the Minister of Higher Education in a move that indicates that the DA's pressure in the GNU is working.
Um, I think yes, of course, it's working here and there. There are a couple of, and I think the press is doing a brilliant job. I think they've got all sort of stories about Paul Masachile, which is good. We have to know about this. But I've got the sense that the whole political fabric in South Africa is kind of collapsing. The president has lost so much credibility. The ANC has lost so much credibility. Nobody believes government anymore. And unfortunately, the DA today is part of government, whether they like that or not. So the whole thing is just they are so incompetent, they are so corrupt in many instances, they are so untrustworthy, they are so bad at doing things that the confidence, I think, in the South African government has reached. The DA certainly is having a bit of an impact here and there, but we need a new political dispensation. There is absolutely no doubt, as far as I'm concerned. What we have today is a horrible government that it simply survives because of this is a marriage of convenience between the ANC and the DA. And let's hope that we're going to find something else pretty soon. But because this is not good for us, what we have.
Dawie Roodt, Chief Economist at the Efficient Group. Thanks as always for your time.